Next up is Jeff Von Ward.
And he was paired with Derek Stevens, whose painting is to my left. My left. Whoa.
Hello. So thanks to Stephanie and thank you to Amelia for putting this together. And all you. And thanks to Toyin and Nick for the original idea. It's just amazing. A privilege to be here. And this is actually my penultimate, my second to last, maybe that's a better way of putting it, reading at CCA. So last night I was watching Killing Bono. Has anyone seen that? Okay. It's a wonderful title. It's actually a better book. So I read the book and I wanted to see the movie. The movie's not as good. Isn't that how it always is? So, but I have a special request, and I was hoping you guys could indulge this fantasy of mine. I thought that I wanted to be Bono, so and you can make it all come true for me tonight. So I was looking at the word Ouroboros, and I think maybe this is just the way my brain is organized, but I feel like I categorize everything by sound. And for some reason this morning I woke up and I was looking at that word Ouroboros, and I started thinking of Wooly Bully. Do you guys know that song?
Yeah.
Can somebody just kind of sing the chorus a little bit, Daniel?
Bully, bully.
Stephanie's got it. Okay, so this is the part where we're going to do one of those like cool U2 like sing-alongs. So I'll just count you in. And instead of saying Wooly Bully, we're gonna say Ouroboros. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was pretty good.
It's supposed to go down.
I think we have to do that one more time. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent.
Ready to go. You just need glasses.
Yeah, exactly.
Only need glasses. You literally only need glasses.
You're ready to go.
I have hecklers now. This is awesome.
No, you have encouragers.
Please don't encourage this guy. Don't. Before I read, I also wanted to just thank Adair Stevens for this beautiful portrait, acrylic on paper. I met with him about a month or so ago in his studio, and I said, "Hey man, how did this happen? Like, how did I get paired with you? This is so cool." I just loved all his art, and he said, "Well, I think I responded to like two things in your piece. There's this character named Terry, and I really identified with him, and there's this look that he gives one of the characters, and it was just so expressive. I felt like I wanted to paint that look, and then through the magic of fine art, he became the character somehow. So Adair is Terry. It's amazing. So anyway, without further ado, I think I should just stop now. I don't know. Oh, and the second reason he said is because the story is called Rocket Man, and he told me he had done this piece on Elton John. So I just thought, oh, cool. So Ouroboros, Rocket Man. Ma always wondered why it was such a big production to go over there. George and Terry are the same age as you two. Correction, Mom. George is older. A lot older, I added. But that wasn't true. He'd just gotten his growth spurt before the rest of us. He never touched me or my brother, but he'd lurch at us sometimes like he intended to. He'd pull his punch and bust a gut and say, "Made you flinch," which Even if we could control it, it was probably best not to. Probably better to render unto Caesar, show him you were a little scared, otherwise he might take your cool as some unlawful provocation. And since we were only staying for a while, we didn't want the hassle. Jim piped up from the back seat. He's a real queef, Mom. That's not a very nice thing to say. It's true, I added. Ma shot me a look in the mirror. He's always been respectful to me, she said. A real gentleman. Jim and I exchanged a look in the back of her gremlin. Sometimes Ma was completely clueless. Like she didn't yet realize the ones who are nicest to the grown-ups, those are the ones you gotta watch out for. I don't believe it, she sang. Terry I could believe, maybe. Kid's so shy. It's a shame, really, what happened to their father. Terry's always getting beaten up by George, Jim said. Well, maybe you should show a little backbone. What happened to their dad, anyway, I asked. I don't think it's appropriate for us to speculate, hon. When Jim asked Terry about his father, he just looked into the distance past us, as if he hadn't heard what he'd said, and then he got up and went to the closet and pulled out his knapsack of Legos. You pussies want to build something or what? We didn't. But we thought it might make the time go faster, and if we got to building, maybe it would mean we wouldn't have to go outside. It was hot, and all summer Ma had been slathering our ears, elbows, and noses with sunscreen until everything smelled like coconuts. Like the Mercury, our trips to the Dolan shot up in the summer. It wasn't a long ride, maybe 20 minutes, but Ma never took the freeway, which made it seem a lot longer. A friend of hers had been injured in a car crash, so she stuck to the back roads, and given how many blind intersections existed between us and the Dolans, I wasn't sure this was any safer. But Ma was a good driver. She always drove 5 miles under the speed limit, and when people honked and waved and sped around us, giving her the finger, she told us patience was a virtue. And though we didn't know what she meant, we knew we'd get there eventually. That summer, Terry was building a model rocket. Bandito, it was called, if you're familiar with it. He'd ordered it out of a Centauri kit catalog. It was 16 inches tall and sharp as a tack on top, painted fire engine red on nose and fins, looked like a replica of something that might have once gone to the moon. Or at least that's what Terry told us. As much as we liked the chrome trim and the name, we'd all been born after Neil Armstrong's giant leap, so lacked the context to really appreciate it, at least in the way Terry wanted us to. As the rocket neared completion, however, Terry started talking about it in a weird kind of way. He'd look at us with his big hazel eyes, usually hangdog, but now staring so intently we'd have to look away. He once told us he was going to hitch a ride to the moon. That was where his father was. That he'd spied him once through a telescope one night when it was waxing of his old man waving back at him. That must have been one powerful telescope, Jim said. My brother and I exchanged a look, and when we told Ma on the way home, we thought Terry might be a little crazy. I remember she said, he's been through a lot. Well, that we knew. His brother George would have been more than anyone to bear. More than enough for anyone to bear. What happened to Mr. Dolan? Jim asked again, a little more innocently this time, as if perhaps we could get this information through the back door. But just then that Debbie Boone song came on the radio, and Ma turned up the dial and started to sing along. Jim and I couldn't help but smile, and when the song lilted into chorus, we joined in, belting with real bravado from the back seat of the Gremlin. Do you guys know this song? You light up my life. Yeah, okay. Next time we visited, Jim decided he'd settle a thing or two. You realize, Terry, you're not going to fit in that rocket, he said. Terry just grinned. Duh, he finally said. You must think I'm stupid. My brother and I looked at each other relieved. Maybe he wasn't crazy after all. Ever heard of a shrink ray before? We hadn't, and we both shook our heads. They're naturally occurring gamma rays from the moon, faggots. But I don't suppose you'd understand that. Well, this was alarming news. As I said, my brother and I had not yet gotten our growth spurt, and neither one of us had an inch to spare. If you go out on a night when it's full, if you stand on the highest peak, those rays will work their magic. Lickety-split. He snapped his fingers. It's a chemical change. Then George came in and stomped the Lego city, Tokyo, to his Godzilla. Talk about changes. We figured maybe it was best to get on our way, but Ma wasn't done talking to Mrs. Dolan, so we had to take turns hanging on her arms like monkeys till she finally told us to just go wait in the car. We'd learned about chemical change, baking shrinky-dinks in Ma's oven, sending Scooby-Doo keychains and plastic amulets shaped like the shmoo to every aunt, uncle, and cousin west of the Mississippi. So what Terry said had the ring of truth to it, even if we didn't believe him completely. On the way home, Jim asked Ma, "Is it true Terry's dad's a cosmonaut?" She grinned. She was listening to the radio, humming along to a little ditty about butterflies. "You mean astronaut, honey." Jim and I shared a look. Evidently, he had been telling the truth. This seemed to explain a lot about him and George. No wonder they were both so miserable. Now it was my turn to ask a question. "And what about the gamma rays, Ma?" "What about them?" We stopped at a red light, and Ma turned around to look at us. "So they really exist, huh?" Jim asked. "Sure they do," she said. "They're as real as you and I are." Jim slapped me on the back. This one thought Terry was stretching the truth. No, I didn't. Thank you.